I'm not okay. Alright, the finale of Ahsoka has dropped on Disney Plus, and I have a lot to say now. So, big time spoiler warning here. If you have not yet watched the entirety of Ahsoka at this point, and you're planning on it, I'd recommend you steer clear of this video, because I will be talking about what happens in this finale, in detail. If you have watched it, or you don't care, you are good. Alright, let's get started, because like I said, I got a lot to say. Cause yeah, this finale left me pretty emotionally drained. Alright, so the episode starts off with something I was not expecting at all. This is actually pretty cool. Morgan Elsbeth over here, she gets imbued with Night Sister magic. We knew that she had a little bit of it because she used it to project the maps, holo projections earlier in the series. But now straight up, those Night Sisters, they grant her pretty much the powers that they have, which is pretty cool for the last 30 minutes of her life. And she even gets the Blade of Talzin. I was like, oh yeah, Mother Talzin from the Clone Wars. She was like the head Night Sister back in the day. And she did conjure up that blade from Night Sister magic in like one episode. And now Morgan Elsbeth gets it here, and it's actually pretty sweet to see her fighting with a sword like that. And speaking of new swords though, we see Ezra constructing himself a new lightsaber, a blue one this time around, calling back to the very first lightsaber he had. You know, in the early seasons of Rebels, his saber that was also a blaster, that one had a blue blade, still one of my favorite sabers ever in Star Wars. And actually I like the scene because they're talking about Kanan Jarrus, how Hu Yang taught him back in the day, because we remember Kanan Jarrus was a Padawan at the time of Order 66. We saw that in the Bad Batch pilot actually. Yeah, see how all these Star Wars shows are linked with each other? I love that. And also tying this in with The Mandalorian, Hu Yang then tells Ezra about the Night of 1,000 Tears. Yeah, he says, like, towards the end of the war, the Empire purged the surface of Mandalore. We knew about that from The Mandalorian. We heard about that in, like, the very last episode of Season 1. And we also learn here that Sabine's family, which, yeah, we remember Sabine is Mandalorian, her family died on that night, which, yeah, holy shit, I had no idea. That must really suck for her. Because we met her family in Star Wars Rebels, and they seemed like alright folks. So yeah, that really does suck. And again, that's just more world building. I love the world building that Star Wars is doing these days. All these different titles linking with each other in these unexpected ways. That's awesome. But really, if we're talking about the meat of this episode, the main gist is Ahsoka, Sabine, Ezra, and Hu Yang are out there. They're trying to get to Thrawn on the Chimera, and Thrawn is trying to prevent them from coming aboard. That is the meat of this episode. They're just trying to hitch a ride. Thrawn's trying to stop them from doing so, and I was watching this so impatiently, because I was like, come on, we gotta get home, because there's only so much time in this 48-minute episode. Really, I saw it as a race against the clock here. Like, we gotta get home before the episode ends. That's how I was watching it. Although some pretty fucking cool things happen. Like, once we get inside that Dathomirian temple, we're trying to work our way up, we see that those Night Troopers are actually, like, zombies. Yeah, those Night Sisters are resurrecting them with dark magic, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is right out of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, when you would go to Dathomir and you would fight these Dathomirian zombies. And I think that happened once in Clone Wars too. And that's what's going on here. These Night Sisters are resurrecting these dead stormtroopers and bringing them back to life and having them fight again. It's like these mindless zombie drones. It's awesome. Again, linking this with the Star Wars Jedi games. Again, in a way. Alright, it's not a direct link, but it was in that game, so there. And then Morgan Elsbeth comes out to fight Ahsoka Tano, and this fight, this was gripping. It was choreographed really well. I mean, those two are just going at it, and Morgan Elsbeth is putting up one hell of a fight with that awesome Blade of Talzin. And again, I was like, Ahsoka could lose something here. Like, she could lose a limb, or hell, even one of those droopy things around her head. Turns out she does end up losing something, actually. She loses one of her lightsabers. Yeah, Morgan Elsbeth actually ends up destroying one of Ahsoka's lightsabers. I was like, oh shit. I mean, obviously Ahsoka can hold her own with just one saber, and actually, who knows? Like, maybe her second one could end up being reconstructed somehow. Meanwhile, Sabine and Ezra are fighting more troopers, and this episode was just one shock after another, because one of the troopers has Sabine up against the wall, and then she reaches for her lightsaber. I was like, oh shit, it's gonna happen! It's gonna be a throwback to Empire Strikes Back, and it totally is. Because we saw last week that she is getting in tune with the Force when Ahsoka called out to her. Now it is finally happening. She Force pulls the lightsaber to her hand. I was like, yes! Sabine Wren is certainly getting Force skilled now, baby. And not only that, but she pulls a Kylo Ren from Last Jedi, and she just the boom, quick impale in the head. That was awesome. That was such a great way to do that for Sabine Wren. Like, I see myself looking back at this moment as a classic Star Wars moment in the years to come. Because there were years of character development leading up to that. And it's just great. Dave Filoni, you wrote that moment. Oh my god, props to you. And as if that wasn't enough for Sabine using the Force, she also manages to push Ezra onto the Chimera as it's departing. So yeah, again, Sabine, she's got skills in the Force now. But then Ezra's like, alright, come on, now it's your turn. And I was like, okay. But then she decides to stay behind to help Ahsoka out. This is really where I was like, oh my god, I'm not okay anymore. Cause I get it, you know, the beginning of this episode, Ahsoka told Sabine, she's like, I'll always be there for you. She doesn't want to leave Sabine like she left Anakin back in the day. So yeah, I understand, those two characters, they have a bond now, as master and apprentice, which now that I think about it, that does mirror the relationship that Baylan and Shin have, where Baylan did leave his apprentice. So yeah, there that is. But then I was like, alright, so how are Sabine and the rest of them gonna get on board the Star Destroyer? I'll get to that later. Ahsoka does end up killing Morgan Elsbeth though, so that's good. And just a couple moves before it happened, I was like, ooh, alright, now you can get her! And then she gets her. She slashes her across the stomach. I was like, ooh, yeah! Damn, Morgan, you put up a great fight, I'll give you that. But in the end, you were no match for the Tano. I really do gotta give it up to Diana Lee Inosanto for playing that role. Cause especially in this episode, Morgan Elsbeth was the most interesting she'd ever been. In fact, I probably would have liked to have seen her go on as a Night Sister. But of course, I'm not complaining, that's one more bad guy down. So in that sense, we do have victory! And it's pretty much the only victory we got. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. Ezra does get home. So there is that, but in the end, Ahsoka and Sabine and Hu Yang, they don't make it in time. Yeah, the Chimera in the big Eye of Sion, it leaves. I mean, Ahsoka and them, they are almost there, but no, they don't make it. At that point, I was like, oh, well, alright. Fuck. So Ezra made it onto the Chimera, and he and Thrawn are now going home, which is one thing I wanted, so great, but I wanted everyone to go home, not just Ezra and Thrawn. Now Ahsoka, Sabine, and Hu Yang, now they're all stranded at Peridia. Really, we just traded one problem for another. So if I'm being honest, I'm no more fulfilled now than I was after the Rebels finale. Cause yeah, alright, we found Ezra, that was great. But can we get everyone home? That was the goal here, you know? Like, why the trade? Why, Filoni? Why did you do this? Now, I imagine that Ahsoka and Sabine will eventually come home, because I imagine they'll hitch a ride with some Purrgil. I just don't want that to be, like, the entirety of the second season of Ahsoka. If it happens, I'll get to that. Because that really would seem more like a waste of time, you know? Like, we figured they're not gonna just live out the rest of their lives stranded on this planet in another galaxy. They're gonna get home eventually. We all know this, right? Like, we all assume this. So I don't want to spend too much time in that process. Let's just advance the story forward, you know what I mean? I'll touch more on this when I get to the conclusion. So now we have the epilogue of the season. First off, that bird that Ahsoka sees. We know this bird, we hardcore fans do anyway, is that bird that followed Ahsoka in the animated shows that pretty much signified that something special is happening. So yeah, something special certainly is happening, for sure. And then, this is actually kind of funny, it shows Shin Hati, and I was like, oh yeah, we haven't seen Shin and Baylan for this entire episode so far. Where are we gonna leave their stories? Well, it shows Shin Hati, she approaches those bandits and she ignites her lightsaber. So I guess the implication there is that she's gonna lead those bandits now. I don't know. I am hoping that whatever happens with her, whether it's an eventual turn to the good side or not, I'm hoping it ends up interesting. And then we see Baylan's skull, and he's on these mountains that look like the dwarf statues at Erebor, and he's looking out at Mount Doom in the background, I guess. And then it zooms out and it shows those statue mountains, and I saw this on Twitter, someone pointed out, these are the Mortis characters from Clone Wars, which was a big prevailing theory surrounding Baylan throughout this entire season I've seen from fans. So yeah, I guess we got those Mortis characters coming into play again. I'm not about to explain who those characters are because that would take another 5 minutes. So if you don't know, look it up, but they're from the Clone Wars. But I am certainly intrigued here though. I'm wondering what Baylan is going to do now, and he's obviously going to be recast. Rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. And so we see Thrawn, he arrives at Dathomir, which is certainly interesting because then we get a shot of that cargo. And so yeah, I am guessing that that cargo is like a bunch of dead bodies that are going to be reanimated into some sort of night magic army. So that's Thrawn's plan? Holy shit. How do you fight an undead army? I don't know, let's ask Aragorn. Seriously though, that sounds like a pretty cool plot for whatever upcoming movie Dave Filoni's working on here. Cause again, I imagine that's gonna be the main threat. Again, I'll touch more on that in the conclusion. We do get the scene where Ezra does reunite with the New Republic. He sees Chopper again and Hera. So it was great to see them seeing each other again. I could have gone for seeing Zeb in that scene though. I mean, come on, that wasn't a ludicrous request, was it? I want that whole reunion with Ezra and Sabine and Hera and Chopper and Zeb. I'll even put Jason in there, cause why not? Oh, maybe next season if there is one, or in the movie, I don't know. And the season ends back on Peridia. Ahsoka and Sabine are like, alright, I guess we're here now for the time being. Let's get comfortable, and so they go off. And I actually love this. The last thing we see is the Force ghost of Anakin Skywalker watching over them. I was like, oh my god, hitting us right in the feels there, Filoni. Seriously? Dude, that was great. Great way to end this season. And also a great way to leave me going, what the fuck? I mean, talk about a cliffhanger. Now Ahsoka and Sabine and Hu Yang, let's not forget him, are stranded in Peridia. I mean, at least we know where they are, but still. But yeah, that is the end of Ahsoka. Season 1. So in conclusion, Ahsoka Season 1, hopefully, was an awesome treat for me as a Star Wars Rebels fan. A bit slow to start, I will admit, but like as soon as it got to episode 4, it picked the fuck up and it was awesome from there on out. This season was, for the most part, everything I wanted it to be and more. Cause it was Star Wars Rebels Season 5, which is what I wanted it to be, so there. I loved it for that. Now, that being said, at this moment in time as I'm filming this, there has not yet been a confirmation of a second season of this show. Right now, what we know for sure is that this season is going to tie into Dave Filoni's upcoming movie, the fan poster of which I'm gonna put up here because I'm pretty sure that is gonna be the title of it. But if I'm being honest, if we need to get Sabine and Ahsoka and Huyang home, plus wrap up Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati, I don't think that movie is gonna be the place for it. I think we're gonna need another season of Ahsoka, cause I don't think just one movie is gonna give us enough time for that. And if those things do end up happening in the movie, I feel like that might be a waste of time, you know? So yeah, I'm pretty sure there has to be another season of Ahsoka coming for us. So now I'm just waiting on pins and needles. Let's get that announcement, alright? Let's get excited! Cause I'm gonna start losing my mind. I'm like, Sabine and Ahsoka and Huyang, they need to get home. And also Shin Hati and Baylan Skoll, like their stories need to go on. We need that continuation. Don't leave us high and dry like this. Yeah, I'm gonna start going nuts over it pretty soon. I mean, I already am, so there. But yeah, Ahsoka Season 1, it's over now. I've loved talking about it here on my YouTube channel. For those of you who have been watching my videos on the show, thank you for watching. This really has been a blast. And this Star Wars fan over here is certainly one happy camper. So ultimately, I got nothing to complain about. Alright, so Ahsoka, Part 8, The Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord. Have you watched it yet? Have you watched the entire series? What are your thoughts on the whole thing? And what are your theories and predictions? Do you think we're gonna get another season of Ahsoka? Or do you think this is just gonna tie in with the upcoming movie? Do you have any questions that I might not have asked? I'd like to know. Let's get a discussion going here. So whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And of course, thank you for subscribing. Peace!